I want to recap just so in case you've forgotten. But Mesopotamia is is where early civilization was. Right? The Fertile Crescent, you know, the Nile, Euphrates, the Garden of Eden. That's Mesopotamia, and that's where civilization really. Um, what we know as civilization, writing and systems and all that stuff. That's where it originated. But how that world operated, that every city, and Mark will tell you, I think when you go to different places where every city has a god. You know, India, every city has their god. Right? You know, that comes from Mesopotamia. It's the residence of a god or goddess who acted as their protector and their provider. And for example, okay, that's in Mesopotamia. Is what?
Sun.
What's up?
Isn't it the sun?
The sun? Well, is a city, and that's where Abram is from.
Oh, you are. That's right.
I call it you are. But the sun god, the moon god, is called Nana. Okay, so you should never call, your grandma Nana. it's a pagan god, all right. And there was a ziggurat, the big Tar Babel, the idea of ziggurat, whatever. It was constructed because why did it construct it? So you to go worship, but they believed, like the Jews, that's where God came and resided for a time, and that's where people met, okay? But the cult of Nana developed very early around the lower course of the Euphrates, centered in connection with the herding of cows, the cycle of life, fertility, yada yada yada, right? Being able to work. Despite, I'm talking about Babylon, despite the achievements by the 6th century, the once thriving metropolis had metaphorically and physically dried up. So, remember, the Euphrates gets dried up, right? But it's done that before, or changed its course, leaving the city of Ur without water and uninhabitable. And Ur and the ziggurat was abandoned and consequently buried beneath a mountain of sand by wind and tide. So archaeologists, people like that, there's ruins all over the place that some resemblance of civilization the way it was before. And Babylon, which is the key focus of Revelation, is one of those places that was a metropolis, was a world center that became nothing, all right? So it disappeared. And the reason why I'm talking about that is because it doesn't seem like it's disappeared, because it's all over Revelation. So I want to give you a few thoughts about what is Babylon? Because they're talking like it's still there, right? But it may not be something physical, all right? So listen to the words of Revelation 16. It's 17 to 21. It says, "Finally, the 7th angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple from the throne, saying, 'It is done.' Then there were flashes of lightning, roaring, crashes of thunder, and there was a tremendous earthquake, an earthquake unequaled since humanity has been on the earth, so tremendous. The great city," right? So that's calling Babylon a city. Right, are you seeing that? The great city. But based on what I've already told you, it can't be the original Babylon. Or it can't be physical. Or if it's physical, it can't be the actual Babylon. It was split into great 3 parts, and cities of the nations collapsed. So Babylon the Great was remembered before God, and was given the cup filled with the wine made of God's furious wrath. Every island fled away, no mountains could be found, and gigantic hailstones weighing about 100 pounds each. Can you picture that? 100-pound hailstone. Fell from heaven on people. And they blasphemed God because of the plague of hail, since it was so horrendous. All right, that's God's word. Inspired word. I've mentioned it before. There is a loud voice at this bowl. There's a loud voice from the temple, from the throne, saying, "It's not. It is done." Right? Just an observation. But how many times it says a loud angelic voice, a loud angelic voice, a loud angelic voice, right? If you're reading Revelation. But it doesn't say that. A loud voice. So it's implying this is actually, I think, the voice of God speaking. It is done. And as you think about Babylon, you need to remember the book of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar, because probably that was the heyday of Babylon, right? And we've taken a look at that. But here's an interesting connection, hopefully with what else is in my head for the first time. But there are ruins, and so when the Americans went in there, were Iraq to take out Saddam Hussein, whatever. Apparently, the United States Marines decided to take up the ruins as their base, and they have actually been recreating the base. And not too far, on another mound, another hill, not too far from there, is the palace that Saddam Hussein tried to build to rebuild Babylon and to make it great, because I don't know if you've ever read that, but he believed, Saddam Hussein believed he was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar, and his plan was to make Babylon great again. But not, if you're following what I'm trying to say, is that that seed is the seed of actually what actually happens in the end times, which is the reincarnation, for want of a better word, of Babylon. He didn't fail. I'm sorry, he didn't fail. He did fail hopelessly. But Babylon will be the end time, and I'm going to use the word superpower, controlling the world. Well, what is that? What will it be? Who will it be? You get some clues in the book of Revelation, and I think it's the next chapter we'll get into. But the woman, Babylon, the whore, sits on 7 hills. All right. If you get into history at all, there's no other answer to that. Historically, the city of 7 hills is Rome. Right? So Rome is Babylon. Babylon is Rome. Okay. And probably, why is Rome significant? Because if you think in terms of superpower, the Roman Empire was probably the greatest superpower that the world has ever known. I mean, literally conquering and controlling the world. I had new thoughts about this. So don't take it as the gospel, I guess, whatever. But to me, it makes sense, and I'm attributing that those thoughts come from not just my reading, but from the Spirit of God, right? Because if you go back to Nebuchadnezzar, right, and the statue, that's you can see that, but I just threw that together over there, right? This statue, this vision, is from God. Okay, that's the point of Daniel. God gave Nebuchadnezzar, pagan king, this vision, and then God gave Daniel, the young Jewish man, the interpretation. And the picture is the head. Okay, so the beginning is Babylon. Then it's the Medes and Persian Empire. So it's the way it worked then. You know, Babylon, the rise and fall of Babylon. Then the the rise and fall of the Medes and Persians. Then Alexander the Great conquered the world. The Greek world kind of took over the world. Then the Romans. Okay, that's the statue. And then at the end, because there's a rock, a stone, that comes from heaven, in a sense, comes and smashes the feet of the statue. That has, the legs are iron, which symbolize the might and power of Rome. And the feet are mixed with clay and iron. Right? So Rome has to be in there. But Rome is at the bottom, all right? So the seven hills are Rome, right? So it's connecting with that. But it's also Babylon, right? Do you follow me or not? How do you make sense of that? Okay. And then I started thinking, you know what? In particular, the Greek world is still all these gods, language. It still influences us today, right? The Romans with their roads, transport, their language, it's still influential today, really. Right? So it's more like a super power, okay? At the head is Babylon. At the feet is some sort of Roman confederation, whatever. So how do you work that out? So here's just a thought: is that Babylon is the first one, and it's representative of everything else that follows. Right? Babylon is the first of the superpowers. Right? You follow me?
Yes.
So instead of getting wrapped up in who's Babylon, what's Babylon, Rome, blah blah, it's like Babylon at the end time. If it's first here and it's last in Revelation, Babylon, it's just saying it's another superpower. You follow me?
Yes.
Instead of getting wrapped up in Rome, people, you can go read anywhere. Some people think it is Rome, Catholicism. It's not. It's a superpower. Coinage. You just think about that even. The Romans are big into, and the Caesars would all be on the coinage. And then a god would probably be on the flip side, whatever. And just, to me, that's how relevant it is. They're not going to make any more coins with Queen Elizabeth on them. You know what I mean? Prince Charles is going to be on them. So, I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's the same culture. Okay? It's the same idea. Babylon is Rome. Rome is Babylon. It's the world culture of the end times. It's the world influencer. It's an end time culture. So I wish I could say I planned it this way, but on 9/11, it's probably very pertinent to think about it. I've read books over the years where people are like speculating. Where's America in end time prophecy? You ever seen those books? Is America in the end times, whatever? And most of it to me is just like super speculation, whatever. But anyway, why did 9/11 happen? I mean, there's conspiracy theories and all this stuff. Well, why did it happen? Because America is a friend of Israel? It could be. But I do find it interesting, thinking about this, is that a large part of the Muslim world call America the Great Satan. And even this past week, that, it's Putin, whatever, and so you can take that with a pinch of salt, whatever. But he's trying to justify what he's doing, saying that he's fending off the West. Now, what does he mean? Well, Western culture. Corrupt, immoral Western culture. Now we should, we should sit down and think about that. War, all right. And like I say, don't take this as the gospel, but I think there's a lot of truth in it. Where does all the junk in the world come from?
China.
Who is the purveyor of garbage? Who's the trendsetter?
Made in
When I lived in Britain, it was like everybody, whatever America starts doing, the rest of the world follows suit.
Yeah.
Except for Muslim. Somebody thinks it's nuts. Anyway,
Or corny.
the West. Who leads the West? America. Who are the trendsetters? America. Who emboldens immorality? I feel like it's America. And it's all being headed up in the name of democracy, freedom, free speech, equality, enlightenment, diversity, crap. Right? So, step back a minute. Superpower. Well, we have more than one superpower, right? How do you know something's a superpower? Probably you start with the military. Right? A superpower is somebody who could, wipe you out and whatever. Right? Who has the largest military budget in the world? Well, some people might think, North Korea, maybe they're they're not a superpower, right? Well, they have lots of military and bombs and, and nuclear stuff and, but they're not a superpower. So maybe it's not just military might. What is the other might? Exactly. The mighty dollar. The GPA. What drives the economy? And, some of you, might sit there and think, oh, well, that's China. And that would fit in with the Euphrates and the army from the east, right? But then, as I thought about that, I thought to myself, no, wait a minute, think about that. Everything that's made in China, where does it end up?
in the U.S.
Well, maybe Russia today. Well, I think that's the issue in politics. It all comes here. It's to feed this economy, right? It seems to me, anyway, that America is the one driving the bus. All things being equal. I did read a book many years ago. I can't remember the title of it. It was something to do with Mystery Babylon, and it was all about America and the fact that Babylon was in New York. Did you know that? Okay. The region, actually, it is also, right? The actual region was once called Huntington South, but a guy called Nathaniel Conklin moved his family into the area around 1803 and named it New Babylon, okay? After, and this is, I'm quoting, after the ancient city of Babylon. And the book that I read about was it was all about Manhattan and the stock exchange and all, how they were all linked together. But regardless of that speculation, Babylon stands for the leader of the end time culture. That's the way I see it in Revelation. It is anti-God, and read in Revelation 16, God is well aware of her sins. She is remembered before God. That's chapter 16, verse 19. And her sins are piled high. then the devastation comes. There's an earthquake like no earthquake that the world has ever known. It's 9/11 on steroids. Right? And you know the crazy thing, I know how this all works. But this past week, this past week, and sadly there was actually a little baby killed in a hailstorm in Spain, of all places. It's a freak accident. Here, I'm quoting you the headline. The hail fell, there you go, for 10 minutes. But it was 10 minutes of terror. That's what they're saying. Right? At least 50 people reported injuries ranging from bruises to bone fractures on a freak 10-minute storm that hit an area in Catalonia. Right? Killed a baby. Terrible accident. But here, why am I talking about that? Well, the hailstones were 10 centimeters. Okay? It's like, there you go. 10 centimeters. They were that size. Okay? All right?
Baseball.
These ones coming from God, from heaven, are 100 pounds. You know? Just imagine 10 minutes of terror for that. Just imagine the scene. And this is no accident. Right? And here's the thing that I'm learning. Actually, God has done it before. What are you talking about? Well, Joshua, chapter 10 and verse 10. The Lord threw them into panic before Israel, who inflicted a great slaughter on them at Gibeon, chased them by the way of ascent to Beth Horon, and struck them down as far as Azekah and Makkedah. As they fled before Israel, while they were going down the slope of Beth Horon, the Lord threw down huge stones from heaven as far as Azekah, and they died. And there were more who died because of the hailstones than the Israelites killed with the sword. Now, that's a story I missed before. And on that day, when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the Israelites, Joshua spoke to the Lord and said, in the sight of Israel, "Sun, stand still." See, I remember that story, but I don't remember the hailstones. And moon, and the sun stood still, and the moon stopped until the nation took vengeance. Is this not written in the book of Joshua? See the similarities? The sun, the moon. That's all in Revelation. God controlling the sun and the moon. Do you follow? Yeah. Hailstones, wiping out Israel's enemies. God has done it before. And Revelation says He's going to do it again. And look at Revelation, it's like, I can still hear that voice. God hasn't never helped me. It's like at Babylon, they're shaking, they're blaspheming God, they're shaking their fists at God. That is their response. Right? And what is this? What is Babylon? It's the system of the beast. It's the mark of the beast. It's a godless system from which the whole world has drunk and from which the whole world gets rich. I'm starting to think it's capitalism. It's consumerism. It's slavery. It's cheap labor. It's trafficking. It's porn. And it's all for people will do in our world today. But would you not agree? In this world today, people will do anything for profit. There is no scruples. There are no morals whatsoever. It is the deceitfulness of wealth. It's the world of lies and lust and pride on steroids. Here we go. Do not love James. 1 John 2. Do not love the world or the things of this world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him, because all that is in the world, the desire of the flesh, the desire of the eyes, the arrogance produced by material possessions, is not from God the Father, but it's from this world. And this world is passing away with all its desires, but the person who does the will of God remains forever. Last thing, a couple of things. 1 Peter 5:13. Listen to Peter, who's most likely in a Roman jail, all right, writing these words. Listen to what he says. The church in Babylon, chosen together with you, greets you, so does Mark, my son. See what I'm saying? Can you wrap that all together? See what I'm saying? Babylon is Rome. Rome is Babylon. The system is Babylon. Babylon is Manhattan. Babylon is the end-time world culture dominated by the beast. It's the last kingdom. It's the last empire. It's the last superpower of man dominated by the beast that will meet its match at Armageddon. It's a godless, anti-God culture that is accumulating wealth, pleasure at the expense of morality and people. What's the message? Well, there's another voice that speaks in chapter 18. And this, I'm finished. Another voice. And if you note chapter 18, verse 4, it doesn't say a voice from the throne, but it's another voice that speaks. And this message is to his church, the church in Babylon, if you're following the thought. And this message is for you today, this morning. I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, so you will not take part in her sins." Revelation 18, verse 4. Don't play the game. Don't be part of the system. Don't get sucked into the culture. Because it is going to be destroyed by God himself. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord.